Very good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining us here on The Big Story. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. First up, updates coming from the top court earlier today, where the Supreme Court has questioned the government's COVID management policy with regards to vaccine procurement in particular, and also raised issues regarding the digital divide that has now clearly come to the fore, with the CoWIN registration being made mandatory. That has made it difficult for the rural population to access these apps for lack of digital access. So the Supreme Court, in a suo motu hearing, pulled up the centre on the vaccine pricing policy and the mandatory CoWIN portal registration. The court asks why the states have been asked to now procure vaccines on their own with another set of pricing that they have to follow. It has asked the centre to end the digital divide between rural and urban India when it comes to registering online for vaccines. Meenakshi joins us with more details. Meenakshi, if you could take us through the main points on what the top court has questioned the centre on the vaccine policy.
Well, that's right. You see, the Supreme Court completely frowning upon the government not invoking its powers under the Drug and Cosmetics Act instead allowing for the vaccine manufacturers to set the terms and conditions for the pricing. And we've seen this in the past as well. The Supreme Court frowned upon the government vis-a-vis the differential vaccine pricing policy. But this time around, the Supreme Court wants to see the policy document basis which this decision was arrived at by the government. Supreme Court said that if after examination of the document it finds everything to be constitutionally sound, then the Supreme Court will leave the matter there. But as of now, the Supreme Court is unable to understand why there should be two sets of pricing, one set for the central government and the other set for the state governments. So that apart, the Supreme Court, for the first time, we are seeing the CoWIN registration being made mandatory, come under the Supreme Court's radar. For the first time, the government has been subjected to Supreme Court heat vis-a-vis mandatory registration for a life-saving vaccine. The Supreme Court questioning the government. Has the government really thought about the segment of the Indian population? And that apart, Supreme Court then going on to make an observation as to how the government should smell the coffee, keep its ears to the ground, see what is happening around it. And Supreme Court then saying that there does exist a digital divide in India between the urban and the rural segments of the population. And then the Supreme Court saying that the government should do away with this policy, which really goes on to enhance this digital divide. Instead, the government should eliminate this digital divide. So two critical aspects where the Supreme Court has questioned the government, putting it on a sticky wicket.
Absolutely. Thanks, Meenakshi, for joining us and putting things in perspective for us. Let me introduce my guests on The Big Story this afternoon. Dr. Tanmay Mahapatra, epidemiologist, joining me on Big Story this afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra, for joining us. Also joining us, Vishwas Pathak, spokesperson of the BJP. Mr. Pathak will help us understand the centre's position on the vaccine policy and why the Supreme Court has today reached the stage where it has questioned literally everything, all the decisions taken so far on vaccine procurement, on the way the centre has now decided that the states will have to take the greater responsibility. But first, I want to go across to you, Dr. Mahapatra, that it's very important for us to understand that from an epidemiology perspective, that somewhere are we missing the wood for the trees? Somewhere the fact that we are all connected in this and an inequitable distribution of vaccine will not help the country. We are together in this, and therefore the vaccination program, in your mind, should it be a centralized process where the centre takes the entire responsibility and not leave it to individual states to fend for themselves in this manner?
Given the fact that health always has become a lot of locally decided factors, it's not always possible for center to ensure that everything is according to the need of the ground. So there is always a requirement of states' ownership in the vaccination distribution policy and its rollout. So I think leaving several aspects to state is quite important, because different states are at different level regarding their distribution mechanism, their infrastructure regarding the vaccination process, as well as the support they need from central. So it should be a amalgamatic process where all support will be in conjunction with the state related needs and optimized by the current situation in each of the states in terms of their infrastructural preparedness. But it is also important to understand that
No, that's
this
precisely what I
equality.
asked Dr. Mahapatra, that since every state is different in its paraphernalia and capacity, it would be unfair to leave it to them to then fend for themselves. And I agree that when it comes to containment and mitigation, the state ownership is required because different factors are at play. But when it comes to vaccine, everybody needs it all the same. The center must pitch in with the maximum support.
That is true, but when you are talking about support, it has to be optimum to the need for each of the states. But when it comes to the delivery, it is very important that states' ownership is ensured through their own process of delivery and own process of implementation in place. Because every state cannot follow equal speed and equal intensity of vaccination given where they are in terms of their vaccine distribution mechanism. So definitely it has to be with state in terms of decision
No,
making
sir,
regarding.
sir, the states are ready with the implementation process. They have the vaccine centers in place. They are ready with the health workers who will do the job. They do not have the vaccines. That's why the question arises here. Mr. Pathak, I'll come back to you, Dr. Mahapatra. Mr. Vishwas Pathak, the Supreme Court has literally frowned upon the existing policy. It has raised 10 big questions, which is running on our screens right now. Let's begin with the first few. Why has the center left it to vaccine makers to fix different prices? Why is there a differential policy, a different price system for the states and different for the center, sir?
See, Apridi, let me put this discussion in proper perspective. During today's hearing, the Supreme Court has categorically said that we are not here to pull you down or criticize. We are here to have a hearing given to the various echoes and forums of the people. And in that matters, this Advocate General on behalf of central government said that if anything is to be changed for better, we'll do that. Now they have raised some pertinent question, and those questions are to be replied within 2 weeks, which we'll do it very shortly. As far as pricing is concerned, I'll tell you, number one, whatever vaccination will be given to the end user or to the citizen, he is not going to be charged. It will be free of cost for him, whether it is from state government or central government. Now, state government like Maharashtra, they are saying that we will write a one-stroke check for whatever amount. So amount is not an issue. Now, differential pricing. Differentiation pricing is there because these vaccine manufacturers are also commercial organizations. They need to procure raw material. They need to pay to the labor charges. They need to meet out their expenses from time to time. So depending upon the quantity raised and timing, that price changes. Initially, central government
I get that
might
point,
have...
Mr. Pathak, that those who can afford it should pay for it. That will help the vaccine manufacturers. That part, I do get what you're saying. What I do not get, however, is at this stage to actually shift responsibility to the states in a way that the center has done is questionable, which the Supreme Court is asking that why at a stage like this, when you come to the 18 plus age group, which is the maximum population in this country, you know that 60% of population is below 30 years of age. So bulk of your population is in that age group. At that stage for the center to withdraw stakes, and also the fact that the financial capability of different states are different. So you have left the states to compete among themselves to corner the vaccines. That is what the Supreme Court is questioning.
We would respond to Supreme Court. See, whatever vaccination program started from the month of January in this country, it was under the guidance of WHO and ICMR. We are doing it step by step. First to our workers, frontline workers, then 60 years plus, then 45 years plus with comorbidities and all that thing. So we are going step by step. In between, state governments insisted that this is a federal state, federal structure, health is our subject, let us also participate, allow us also. So decentralize it. So keeping that thing in mind, central government has given them also another option that state can also parallelly procure vaccines and do it. And if both the state and central government can do it together and ramp up, it will be faster thing. So that was the whole point.
But that
doesn't
system
mean
has failed, sir. I'll tell you why. Bharat Biotech writes to the Delhi government saying, we cannot give you the vaccines, we will only deal with the center. This is your Indian manufacturing company. The global tenders have been rejected because let's understand, any global vaccine manufacturer would like to deal with bulk orders, not with every small state and their small orders. Does not work out, does not make business sense. Everybody knows that. And then the center turns around and says, we told you so, that you are not going to get entertained with the global tenders. I mean, it's not a one-upmanship out here. You need to leave the center state politics aside, Mr. Pathak.
No, you're not understanding. See, this is what is to be told to state governments. Center has been telling them that we'll do it in centralized manner. Whenever there is a shortage of vaccine, whenever there is a shortage of any community, there has to be a regulated and rationed kind of approach. And therefore, central government was doing that. Now, state government wanted this to be decentralized. That time, none of the channels had a debate that state government should stop demanding those things. So therefore, having done something and scrutinizing it retrospectively.
So, but you have a decisive leader like Prime Minister Modi, who has been extremely decisive in taking big decisions and making things happen. Are you telling me that the center has decided to succumb to the demands of the states? It's because of their whims and fancies that you relented? That is not the case. You clearly did not have a plan in place, sir. Let me bring in Dr. Mohapatra once again. Dr. Mohapatra, you know, what I'm trying to understand here is that are we better off with a centralized vaccine policy where the center calls the shot, the center does the procurement and the state executes, where, you know, it will of course get the supplies and it will make sure it is administered without wastage, it is administered by trained personnel. That is the state's responsibility. But procurement, if you leave that scattered all over the place, it's become a spectacle, and that is what the Supreme Court is calling it, Dr. Mohapatra.
It can be a standalone of either. It cannot be only centralized, it cannot be only state-driven. There is a requirement of having this completely conjoint synchronized approach so that the need is communicated in real time in terms of, because we have to optimize. It's very clear that we cannot vaccinate 130 crores of people at the same time, but we need to do that. That's the only weapon through which we can actually properly combat the situation and avoid the third wave. Now, to do that, we have to have the optimized, rational utilization of everything which is available. While central government needs to ensure that the requirement is somehow met by doing all kind of international and companies dealing and etc. to ensure that appropriate amount of and adequate amount of vaccines become available for the whole country. While getting it distributed to across the states, there will be a requirement of optimization which needs to be bidirectional. And you rightly said there should not be any conflict regarding state versus government in this, because we are actually having a scenario where the whole human population is at stake. And for that matter, it's very important that we understand how to have a system where state and the central government can work together at tandem, working in a conjoint system, not really being it fully centralized and not really leaving it fully on the state side. It has to be a proper synchronized approach.
You know, Dr. Mohapatra, even a small change in the rate of vaccination sets us back, because, you know, there's a very detailed graphics in today's Times of India, and it's very clear that if your daily numbers fall, for instance, from the first week of this month where the average doses per day was somewhere around 55,944, it would take you all the way up to 2029 to vaccinate the whole of Maharashtra's population. And if that picks up pace, suddenly then it becomes like, if you manage to vaccinate 2,79,833, that is your average, and I'm reading from the graphics in front of me, then you will manage to vaccinate your population in Maharashtra specifically by November 2022. So you see the difference, how critical it is to vaccinate as many people as quickly, Dr. Mohapatra. I want you to reflect on this for us, that is the government faltering in this aspect? That, you know, just letting it be, not taking it seriously enough, there's a huge price to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. That this is actually the time when we need to ensure that the maximum people can get vaccinated without having these kind of age barriers and all other stuff. But this is also true that we are talking about so many people. So what is the availability? What is our policy to procure all those things? We need to revisit them and address as fast as possible. I guess the Supreme Court's questions are actually to ensure that revisiting process is done in real time with maximum intensity. It's not really telling somebody that you are faltering or telling somebody that you are doing great. It's actually to ensure that we are having right questions addressed
Okay.
in real time, because definitely we need to get all the civil
Yes.
bodies, all the government
And
systems.
one of those
and
questions is, quick last word to Mr. Pathak. Yes, I need to close the conversation, but last word to Mr. Vishwas Pathak. Can you tell us that why you always being caught on the wrong foot and playing the catch-up game? Even now, after it was pointed out that the rural India can never access your CoWIN app, now it's decided, okay, we'll allow the walk-ins. But this should have been planned beforehand. Everybody knows that the digital coverage is not there in this country for the rural population to register on a CoWIN app.
No, I think you have not understood what Supreme Court has said today. See, about walk-in, central government has said that whenever there were surplus vaccines and no registrations available for that day, we are allowing walk-in for a day or two. It is an intermittent process. As far as other things are concerned, vaccination is concerned, central government is prioritizing because there is a shortage of vaccine. When there is a shortage of vaccine, we need to prioritize. There has to be elimination criteria. And accordingly, government is doing that. As far as digital divide is concerned, yes, there is digital divide, but it should not be so much undermined also. People in villages are also now technically trained. They can go to the computer center. They can register themselves, not only for vaccine, for other benefits they are used to. I'm not saying they are absolutely at par with people from the city. There is a divide, but there will be a solution to that also. See,
No, I'm
such,
sorry,
with
you
such
are
a
far
pandemic,
removed from the reality, sir. There's a huge vaccine hesitancy. There is no awareness created. You go to the interiors of Chhattisgarh, people who are in Bihar will tell you that the rural areas, people are not willing to take the vaccine. Forget about registering on CoWIN app.
See, they are not
I'm sorry,
ready
but
to
this
take
is the
vaccine
reality we are getting from our
because
reporters.
opposition leader like Rahul Gandhi says, don't vaccine, it is a Modi vaccine. So we have to live with this reality. There is opposition like Rahul Gandhi who claims that this is Modi's vaccine, don't take it. So we need to make awareness among those people, which we are going to do that. But don't underestimate them. They
You're
are
quoting
also
something 1
techno-savvy.
year ago, but right now, all the opposition parties are clamoring for vaccines. All the states are clamoring for vaccines. They are rather telling the center that please do the procurement and supply us the vaccines, which is not happening. And the Supreme Court has asked for a response now, as Mr. Pathak also pointed out. Within 2 weeks, an affidavit is to be filed to respond to all these issues, primarily the issue of procurement, why there is a differential policy between the center and the states, and the issue of digital divide. I'm afraid I'll have to leave it at that. Dr. Mohapatra and Vishwas Pathak, thank you so much for joining us here on The Big Story.